Hello, everyone. I'm Nidhi Wadmark, Senior Product Manager at PayPal, and also the Women in Product Bay Area TriValley Chapter Lead. Welcome to the Drive Your Personal Roadmap stage. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors and all of you without whom this event would not be possible. In the chat area, let us know where you're joining us from and how many of you are aspiring product managers here today. During this session, Life Beyond Product Management, we have three wonderful speakers. First, on stage, we have Kalia Aragon, Product Manager from Disney Streaming Services. Kalia Aragon is a social justice advocate turned seasoned product manager. Most recently, she played an instrumental role in launching and scaling Disney Plus internationally. Previously, she worked at Ghostery, fighting to arm users with privacy-minded tools, and in the strategic consulting world, where she helped both for and not-for-profit companies manifest digital products from ideation to launch. With experience and skills as varied as your favorite buffet, Kalia believes the best products, like the best meals, are most enjoyed with a diverse and collaborative team. Kalia Aragon will share her expertise with you during our next presentation. Against the Grain, Why to Hire Non-Traditional Product Managers. Please join me in welcome Kalia to our stage.
Imagine walking down the street in a beautiful, flowing silk Diane von Furstenberg dress. To your left and to your right, you see only men wearing company-logoed backpacks or no-tuck Oxford button-ups, with the occasional hoodie here and there. The differences are so apparent between you and those around you, and although some may feel uncomfortable, your stride is nothing but confident as you ride against that grain. Who is she, you might ask? Well, that girl is me. My name is Kalia, like Kalia on the phone, and I'm a product manager at Disney Streaming Services, where pre-COVID, that image was me walking to our Manhattan office. As someone who not only looks different than a lot of her peers, she also thinks differently too, and apparently refers to herself in the third person. I'm here today to tell you my story and why hiring non-traditional PMs is exactly what the world needs right now. When I was trying to find a reason to justify why you should care about what I'm saying today, I didn't have to look any further than out my front door. At least once a week, I see and hear hundreds of Brooklynites protesting for justice for Breonna Taylor and the Black Lives Movement. It serves as a constant reminder that now we need the best people contributing their talents, their creativity, and their relentless energy to solve the problems that are before us. And even if some of us don't work in the social justice space day in and day out, we do have the power to contribute to this movement. You ready? Let's get to work. Now, we have about one TED Talk's worth of time together, but my hope is that you will walk away with these three things. The way we hire no longer serves us. Hiring different makes sense with a dollar sign, and great talent can't be ignored. So first things first, how do we hire? Well, before the technology industry, we really rewarded loyalty. Many people would work at the same company doing the same job for decades, and we'd praise them for it. Also, the workplace wasn't very diverse. Obviously, at first, women weren't a part of it, and slowly we've been able to bridge the gap. But in modern times, with technology, we've changed a bunch of things. For example, what we once valued loyalty, we've changed to notoriety. Rather than heralding someone for being at a company for 10 years, we value any snippet of time at a big company like Facebook, Apple, or Google. We've changed what used to be called specialization, someone who focused on sales or HR, and now we call them expertise, categories that people have under their belt, experiences that they've made in the workplace. And that's something we value, consistency, not necessarily imagination. And all in all, with the pressure to be able to be graduates from high-ranking universities like Yale and having notoriety from working with companies like Facebook and Google, essentially we've created a very exclusive nature where candidates, especially those of color and of varied socioeconomic circumstances, aren't a part of the process. And I don't need to tell you that as a result, most of the rooms we're in aren't of women and aren't of people of color. And although some things have changed, they really have mostly stayed the same. Now, the question is, why do we need diversity? Well, representation is important. Again, I don't need to tell any of you, but without having various identities, having a seat at the table, it's going to be impossible for us to be able to build products and services that serve our users. I can give you all the stats about how many women and people of color exist in the workplace, but I think we all know the fact that it's something we need to address and we just need to fix it, period. Now, the majority of my talk will be focusing on another component of diversity. Now, you can still have a team that looks diverse, but is still very traditional from its makeup. Let me challenge you with this. Think of a maze, that little game that you would see on a children's menu at a restaurant when we were still allowed to go, where you have a start and a finish. There are obviously a bunch of different ways that you can solve it. Most folks go the straightforward route, start at the start and finish at the finish. Granted, a very efficient and minimal mistake option, proven to be fair. But what about those people that solve that puzzle in a different way? I consider them non-traditional. And I think that we need people who see things differently because what we've tried just isn't working anymore. For example, I believe that through the power of technology now, for good or for bad, a small group of people can impact so many, millions, if not billions. Actually, when I found out originally how many people started Instagram versus how many users they actually had, I was blown away. If we are truly advocates as product managers for our users, the architects of our products can not only represent a narrow view of perspectives, that means we aren't doing our jobs. And right now, more than any time, we're being asked large ethical questions. What are we going to do about data privacy? What is the effect social media has on our young people? Do we want these questions to be asked by a small group of people who come from the same universities, the same work experiences? I don't think so. And if you need any proof at all about what the power of a dissenting opinion is, you don't have to look any further than the late, great RBG. Making ethical decisions about our products and services cannot happen in a vacuum. They require divergent thinkers who truly work through these complicated questions. And we do that by hiring folks of differing opinions and backgrounds. Now, if you're not sold on the ethics of the question, let me present the fiscal impact. Putting on my business hat, I think about what drives a business. And to be honest, it's money, and that's fine. To make money, you usually have to launch a product or service that's different and needed in the market. Most companies will find a place where they're unique, put a stake in the ground, and say, this is what we do best, until the competition arrives. I work in the streaming industry, where we're applauded not about what we do the same, but what we do differently. When we think about the teams that drive these products and services, you have to think about each individual hire you bring onto your team. I believe that everyone, just as Warren Buffett would say, comes with a circle of competence. That is a reflection of everything that person is capable of doing as a result of their experiences, aptitude, and study. When you bring new talent into your team, do you want to be able to maximize your output by creating multiple spheres of competence, or do you want them to overlap? I believe that by hiring individuals of differing circles of competence, you can build teams that make new ideas that always can become a success. I don't believe that our issues now is around productivity. This isn't the Industrial Revolution. We lack innovation. We need the new, original, clever idea, not the average, same, predictable expectations. So to round this out, we've hit the ethical components of why hiring different makes a difference. We've gone over the logical piece, but now is the pathos, the emotion, my story. Now, I'm a Mexican and Filipino, daughter of an immigrant family and the eldest of my siblings. Neither of my parents went to college. I am very fortunate that I did. I studied political science at a state school in California, all while working full-time. My professional career started in the nonprofit world, and from a very young age, I've always wanted to make the world a better place. Now, on paper, I'm sure many of you, perhaps in this room, wouldn't have hired me for a product role. And to be fair, when I first started applying, many said no. I get it. I wasn't a traditional candidate, and you didn't have the proof that you've always expected to see about what I was able to contribute. But the moment I did get that chance to prove what I could do, I have done nothing but exceed expectations and bring values to the teams I've on. The first product I launched with a product manager job title, even though I had done it before, was incredible. I ended up building an app in 8 weeks with one developer in Germany and one designer in the US. It also ended up getting featured in the Mac App Store, which was a very exciting win. But working with those limited resources and getting the job done on a tight timeline was what I lived and breathed in the nonprofit world. It becomes second nature learning how to do more with less. Now, another main component of what it means to be a product manager is stakeholder management and bringing them all about to consensus. Have you ever tried getting Republicans and Democrats to sign onto a foreign aid bill? I have. And so now in my role, I've been able to manage the largest portfolio of products on my team that covers the most amount of stakeholders spanning all across the business. And while technically that was the first time I've ever done that, it wasn't a challenge. And that just goes to show you there isn't just one way to learn how to do something. As much as I'm proud of all the things that I've been able to prove that my non-traditional background has prepared me to be a product manager, I'm more proud about what I've brought my team that they didn't even know they needed. Servant leadership is a foundational component of my identity. I believe that true leaders exist to serve. And as a result, this has affected my product leadership style and how I interact with my stakeholders and counterparts. As a result, I've built a community of followers that are just as invested in me as I am invested in them. If I need a favor, some help, or to sneak in a bug ticket, it's never a huge undertaking because they know I support them and in turn, they support me. Although being good collaborators is a foundational component of being a product manager, I brought something different. I brought friendships. For example, when I was preparing for this talk, I was a little bit nervous, and just in the middle of my brain block, I received a gift from a stakeholder, which is a canvas framed with an RBG quote on it. It said, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way where others will join you." And it was so special to get this little gift, but proves exactly my point, that the goodwill and community building that I'd learned in my past experiences were a special addition that I was able to bring to my team and make us more successful and effective in the organization. Now, this talk isn't about me. It's about all the incredible talent that is just waiting to bring value to all of your teams. I am not an aberration. I am just proof of what happens when you don't ignore great talent, when you give someone the chance to show you what they can do, and when you take the time to look at someone more than just the words on their resume. Now, I hopefully have you fully sold on this idea, but I do have some homework. And this applies to everyone. As soon as you're done with this training, as soon as this conference is over, I need you to go back to your teams and ask for unconscious bias training. Each of us have invisible barriers that we have towards every candidate or potential hire that we interview. And nothing is wrong with those biases until we're aware of them. Without breaking these invisible barriers, we're going to continue to ignore great talent that can bring value to our teams. And this is something that we'll have to perpetually work on. But bringing it top of mind with something like a training can really make all the difference. Hiring managers, I'm going to need you to change the whole way that you hire, but I'll give you some tips. First, start with auditing your job descriptions. There have been a bunch of studies that prove that certain words attract more male or female candidates based on the words that you choose in the listing. I encourage you to think thoroughly about how you're representing your organization or the role, and make sure that it reflects exactly who you're looking to attract. And maybe even more controversial, I want you to ditch the resumes when you get to the panel portion of interviews. When you bring in cross-functional people to your team, give them topics or areas of focus to ask your candidate, maybe even situational questions, but don't have them be biased by the education or work experience that they'll see on a resume. Let the candidate stand out on their own and ask them those hard questions. Make them prove they've got it, what it takes. Now for the talent in the room, I want you to have this talk as a reminder that you can always own your story. You can be proud of who you are and what you've done, even if it wasn't in the tech sector. I found so much value in when I was able to rewrite my narrative and translate all of my past experiences to things that would make me successful as a product manager. It was scary at first, but be proud of what you've done and know that you are prepared to join new ventures and carve a new direction in your career. But ultimately, remember that interviews are a two-way street. This is just as much about you finding a good fit as it is them. And don't feel bad when you get a no. It could just be a not yet. So in closing, I just want to remind you that I believe that the way we hire no longer serves us, given the times that we're in, and that hiring different does make a financial impact and benefit us in the long run. And ultimately, we can't afford to spend one more day ignoring great talent. I hope to see you in an interactive session and maybe an interview in the future. Please be good to yourself and others. Talk soon.
Thank you, Kalia. Next up, please welcome Oriana Castro Ramirez, founder and product lead at Duety. Oriana is a product manager born and raised in Colombia. She's the founder and product lead for the couples-based app Duety, as seen on Shark Tank in 2018. She brings over 9 years of experience in product innovation, marketing, and storytelling, working with brands including Toyota and Procter & Gamble. Before founding her company, she worked at Leo Burnett and Sancho BBDO, where she crafted the creative digital proposal that helped them get the regional account for Twitter. Oriana is an activist, most prominently in the Women in the Workplace movement. She's launching her new project, #YahoraK, or Now What, a resource platform for allies and survivors from sexual harassment and abuse in the workplace. This project is the result of half a decade as a survivor herself, working to rediscover worthiness, sorority, and connection through her craft. Oriana will share her expertise with you during this next presentation, from me to survivor to an innovative startup founder.
What is the first thing you think when you hear PTSD? You probably wouldn't picture someone that looks like me. I didn't know what post-traumatic stress disorder in women was until a few years ago. The first time I listened to a woman talk about this was from Lady Gaga, back in 2015. She said that the only way to survive her pain was to create this Lady Gaga persona because she was much stronger than Stephanie Germanotta. But soon later, she didn't know who she was anymore and wanted to quit music after having success. So she needed to revise the kind of artist she would be in a way she wouldn't just be a money-making machine, and her creativity wouldn't take the backseat. Gaga, like myself, is a survivor of sexual assault. We have significant differences in how resilience over trauma like this has improved our lives. But we share a common ground. I believe that any woman capable of looking at the trauma monster in the eyes with the right toolset to defend herself can achieve the most outstanding innovation in the world. It took me a while to get here and look back to realize I have no regrets. I was born and raised in Colombia, where as a society, we very likely have collective PTSD for staying decades in an internal war. During my time there, I started intense therapy when my startup, Duety, was born. After a few sessions, I remember something I hadn't consciously thought about. I had been sexually abused for years when I was a little girl by an older girl, a cousin. Duety became my pain outlet, and its survival and mine depended 100% on me. My mind and body collapsed multiple times, but I still pushed through and somehow ended up getting investment offers on Shark Tank. Without a doubt, my most severe trauma settled from publicly breaking my silence back in 2017, right before the MeToo movement. My story of surviving sexual harassment was moving around the national media for 4 months. The cyberbullying was ignited. I was ridiculed. And the creative network I loved so much shut their doors in my face. We've heard stories like this for years, especially since MeToo. Still, we don't speak enough about this issue to understand how we all react to this. For example, I couldn't believe that my voice could release so much pain, but at the same time cause what felt like an even greater wound. So I hid and slowly started to disappear. But I'm emerging now. Over the last 6 years, I've dedicated my life to healing my trauma response to uncertainty, channeling that energy into creative innovation. In other words, I've been preparing for this pandemic for a long time. Tools like therapy, meditation, and exercising are great, but I needed more. So I've collected 3 mental health tactics for whenever I feel my mindset is in the backseat. The first is I realized everything I do affects everything around me, especially my work. What's affecting me right now? Well, there's a global pandemic, riots worldwide, the Black Lives Matter movement, and a crucial election in the US that will affect the rest of the world. I'm working through it all. But back when I was 22, I got my first job as a copywriter at my dream advertising agency, Leo Burnett, the agency that created Tony the Tiger and the Marlboro Man. It was everything I had ever dreamed of until I started getting attention for different reasons other than my work. I was always triggered by unwelcome sexual events, and this was affecting my life. Men were touching me without my consent. My bosses and colleagues were asking me about my sex life. Songs about sleeping with the interns were being sung in the halls. I thought I was broken when all I desperately wanted was to belong to this tribe. No one else seemed to care. Why was I taking it so hard? Back then, I hadn't consciously processed what had happened to me as a little girl, but my body was remembering it all. After a few months, the unthinkable for me happened. I was counting calories, getting obsessed with my weight, and purging myself in a bathroom stall after lunchtime. Giving shape to this traumatic experience was not easy. My brain developed nervous bulimia, so I would have an anchor to a physical sensation so I can cope with the painful reality around me and wouldn't lose my mind or finally give in to end it all. Along with it came the depression and anxiety. I understand that I tried to control my body because I didn't have any skill in the situation I was living in my workplace. I also didn't have any point of reference, experience, or vocabulary to describe my feelings. Now I'm grateful to my body for saving my life. The bulimia stopped after a few therapy sessions, but the coping mechanisms shifted to shopping, partying, and hanging out with the wrong people. The ultimate one was when I sabotaged the launch of my product after leaving that industry behind. I was so proud and I worked so hard to create it. But unconsciously, I was afraid of success for my work and creativity. So I turned the attention towards this story. 10 days after the launch of my product, Vice magazine published my anecdotes surviving all this, and my project became secondary. A big part of the therapeutic work for PTSD involved developing acute self-awareness of your thoughts and physical sensations so you can see the triggering happening without reacting to it. What's affecting me right now has to be the most crucial question in your daily life. If you don't ask yourself that, your mind will find a way to make you pay attention to what you're ignoring. and it will usually bring you to your knees in the space you spend the most time in. And it's hard to do it on your own. Brené Brown's work has helped me to understand how shame affects women through our bodies. And in her book, Daring Greatly, she suggests these 3 practical things backed up by science that I do every time I feel shame with my intuition. First, be courageous and talk to someone that has earned the right to hear you. Second, talk to yourself the same way you would talk to someone you love. Third, own the story. Don't let it grow or define you. I've learned that trauma can only grow with others that shame you into silencing, but it also heals best between people. This has to be done with a person that wants to see you succeed and cheers for you. However, it's vital to remember that if you vocalize your suffering to someone and their response is dismissive, it reflects poorly on their ability to provide support, not your experience's validity. This happened with my mom. She couldn't understand why I was so affected by this and said many unsupportive things for years. I really resented her for that. Except I didn't know that I reminded her of painful stories involving her entire life as a self-made businesswoman. And now this was affecting her capacity to show support for her daughter. When she shared her own trauma with me, we started healing each other. And by doing so, we are stopping the cycle of intergenerational trauma, so hopefully my future daughter won't ever have to live such experience again. Share the unresolved stories that you're dragging so they don't grow, and believe in the healing power of social support. Gaga was first, then my therapist, then finally Harvey Weinstein's exposés with the ultimate MeToo movement. It saved my life. I was no longer alone. This is relevant because product management is an art form, not a science. We must develop consciousness in what's happening within ourselves to manifest our highest potential through our creative work. So ask yourself, what's affecting your mental energy right now? The second thing is, labels will defeat you. When I moved to the US, I realized I was addicted to victimhood. PTSD is such a heavy cross to carry around. It would be the first thing I would tell anyone new I met to excuse my intensity because I don't do small talk. I'm still unemployed, and of course, the pandemic has made it more challenging. Since I got my green card last October, I've applied to 132 product manager jobs. And in these applications, there's a disability self-identification option at the bottom. PTSD enters in that characterization. Should I lie and say no? I asked this to a product recruiter at a giant tech company, and he cried to me, "No! Why would you put more obstacles to your process that you already have? You're a Latina woman in technology, trying to get hired during a pandemic. Most of your experience is in your home country, and you're new in this market. It's not lying because, in fact, I see you've healed a lot. And recruiters like me don't care about the person you were. We care about who you are now." We become addicted to our labels, especially when it comes to self-doubt. I am no longer a victim. I am a person who has conquered a lot. When he said that to me, it helped me release the tremendous pressure I had put on myself when I was diagnosed with this. Now some labels end up in survivor or product manager. Most end up in woman. But before I am any of that, I am a human being. And so are you. It finally made sense. You may feel massive pressure to give yourself a label or align with a craft, but the truth is that most of us do many different things. Just remember to play to your strengths. Instead of trying to assign yourself a label, try setting a calling. A calling is defined by the number of strengths we are using in our jobs. By knowing them, we can rely on ourselves to prevail over anything that 2020 and the many years to come will keep throwing at us. You may have an idea of what they are, but how can you really know? The VIA survey is the only free scientific survey of character strengths in the world. In 15 minutes or less, it will reveal your greatest gifts. You can access it and other resources to the web app. I focused on applying my top 4 to my everyday life, and my anxiety drastically improved. They are creativity, curiosity, appreciation of beauty and excellence, and honesty. By leaning on those 4 characteristics, I've embraced my unique story with all its surprises and allowed myself to use my talents authentically. In November, I'm launching a personal project to offer the first online Spanish community for survivors of sexual violence in Colombia. Here, anyone can find curated resources to understand their context, find solutions exclusive to our regional challenges, and heal together with many of us so they can move on with their professional and personal ambitions intact. Y ahora qué is the name and the translation to now what. And I'll make sure to help as many survivors as I can with finding their personal answers to that question. Now, the third and final suggestion: it's okay if life doesn't go the way you planned it to. We suck at predicting the future. We have to understand right now that stability is an illusion, and technology amplifies this lesson. We can't predict for a fact if Facebook is going to be the ruling social network in 5 years, just like no one predicted how the App Store would change the software market forever. This need to predict appears because we try to model the future based on past experiences, but our minds don't work in absolutes. They work on relatives and comparison to reference points. Our expectations end up in mispredicting the happiness of our achievements. Therefore, we're not good at predicting in general. This is called impact bias, a tendency to overestimate the emotional impact of a future event, both in intensity and duration. And according to Peter Ayton et al., we don't get better at impact bias as we get older. Think back at how you felt at the beginning and the middle of this 7 months pandemic. We didn't have all the facts, but we did have a lot of feelings that made us believe every prediction was wrong. How do you feel now? Are you getting used to it, or are you getting better at it? According to Judith Lefebvre's study from 1988, we must experience an optimal mix between challenges and skills to feel a state of flow and happiness. At the beginning of this pandemic, both challenges versus skills were minimal, so we were apathetic. When it reached our countries, we faced rising levels of challenges every day, while our skills for managing this were minimal. Our anxiety levels were through the roof. Then by the middle, our skills for handling it got us worried. Now that time has passed, we're relaxing because we're developing a new set of skills with every day that passes to address these challenges better. The best way to summarize this is as follows. Innovation in uncertain times is developed believing that our most basic abilities can be acquired through dedication and hard work, and creative solutions will present themselves if they find us working. So ask yourself, what's affecting you right now? Don't marry yourself to labels, and embrace that we suck at predicting the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Oriana. Next up, please welcome Susan Brennan, Executive Vice President and COO at Bloom Energy. Susan brings 25 years of manufacturing experience and has dedicated her career in improving manufacturing to assure the US maintains a vital manufacturing footprint, especially in areas of key technological advances. In her time as a manufacturing practitioner, she has always been a strong proponent of sustainability, starting in her first role as the environmental and coating manager with Douglas and Lamson, and most recently launching the all-electric Nissan Leaf. Throughout her career, she has maintained that jobs and the environment can have a symbiotic relationship, and that passion drives her as she pursues her role as COO at Bloom. She has also created and supported organizations that encourage young women to pursue careers in STEM as a way to support future generations of technological manufacturing. Susan Brennan will share her expertise with you during our next presentation. The road to the top doesn't have a roadmap.
Hello, and welcome to my session. The road to the top does not have a roadmap. Taking charge of your career in uncertain times. And the topic I'm going to speak to today is actually based on a book called The Road to the Top is Not on the Map, and it's published by SAE, which is a Society of Automotive Engineers. You can find it on Amazon and all the places that you find books, and you may be interested in the book in general. It features female leaders who candidly share the habits, motivations, triumphs, defeats, and lessons learned that help them achieve top jobs in the industry. Their insights have relevance for women at all stages in their career, whether it's young women interested in pursuing a career in the auto industry, those looking for the next strategic move, or those seeking insight and inspiration. And today I'm going to speak to the points that I talked about in that book and want to leave you with a candid conversation on the career journey that I have had. So before I begin the conversation, I want to have you have some questions in your head as I'm talking about my story. Do you think you need to know exactly what you want to do as you sit here today? Or do you think of your career path as a journey? When you were little, did you know what you wanted to do when you grew up? Are you doing what you thought you would? If you're saying to yourself, no, me neither. What I wanted to do. I wanted to save the world. I wanted to be a genetic engineer. My dad died at the age of 29 when I was 5 years old due to a congenital condition, and I wanted to be the solution, solve the big problem, and make sure that other young people did not have to go through the same type of trauma and tragedy that I went through. I never wanted to work in manufacturing, and I wanted to travel the world. So to give you some framework of why I didn't want to work in manufacturing, I grew up in a steel town. And although I'm very proud today of being from the steel town and from the work ethic I learned from the people in the community, the education they provided me with, at the time growing up, the air quality was not that great. And it was not a desirable place to live. However, the mill provided good jobs, which provided good tax base, which provided good education for me. But as you can see, this is my community, and I did not want to work in manufacturing. So then, what really happened? I spent 5 years doing research. So I started my career, having my undergraduate in microbiology from University of Illinois. And what I found very quickly was that being in a lab by myself, changing one variable and then rerunning an experiment was neither consistent with who I am or did I believe was going to get me to the place that I wanted to be, which was changing the world. So what did I do? I spent 25 years building cars and car parts. Definitely not in my plan. I have traveled the world, and that was in my plan. So now I'm working in the distributed energy sector in Silicon Valley. So you can see me on the left side in my Nissan uniform with the Altima on the final assembly line in Tennessee. And today in Silicon Valley, standing next to the Bloom box, the distributed energy solution that is always on, reliable power, clean power, mission critical capable, and I'm very proud to be at Bloom today. So my journey. So after I did research for 5 years, and I worked at 2 different places in Texas, moved to Iowa, opened an automotive components plant, and then built a new assembly plant in Kansas City, Missouri. I then joined Ford Motor Company and managed facilities in multiple locations, and ended that career by creating their manufacturing business office for 110 plants around the world. I then joined Nissan and managed the largest automotive assembly plant in the Americas at the time, and an engine plant that included forging and casting. And then at what would maybe have been the end of my career in automotive, I joined Bloom Energy and created working for a company that's scaling a brand new technology and creating a new industry. So what have I learned? I learned quite a bit in my time in the workforce. Resilience is earned and learned. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent, the famous Eleanor Roosevelt saying. If you think you can do a thing or you think you can't, either way you're right, the famous Henry Ford quote. Be the change you want to see and take risks. Disrupt yourself before someone does it for you. All right, so let me tell you a short story about a stuffed monkey. So early in my career in automotive, in the late 90s, I was in a very traditional male-dominated automotive assembly plant. And I was responsible for what was called final assembly. So basically, when the body shell comes out of the paint shop, all the parts that have to go on the car, all the systems, you put everything on the car, build it, it runs, and it ships in a car carrier or a train to the dealership. So thousands of parts, thousands of people, thousands of processes. So the plant manager was working very hard to improve quality, which is a noble concept. And the way that he chose to improve quality was to implement who has the monkey. So as you can imagine, and this is way back before the computers and the algorithms and things we have today, there was enormous amounts of data that had to be managed. And so the team who had the lowest quality piece of data was the team that had to carry the monkey, and in this case, the leader that had to carry the monkey. So as in many points in my career, the odds were stacked against me. One of my peers had about 5% of the data. Another one of my peers had about 10% of the data, and I had 85% of the data. So you don't have to be a statistical genius to realize that the chances of me carrying the monkey were 100%. So as we went through this process of reviewing data in large meetings, I was required to carry a stuffed monkey throughout my day, all through the plant, walking through the plant, talking to people on the floor. And so what I've learned here about resilience, and I consider myself a pretty resilient person. I considered myself already at that point a pretty resilient person, having lost my father young, having had quite a bit of disruption in my life, was I could do 2 things. And you remember, this is the late 90s. I could push back. I was the only woman on the leadership team and one of the few women in the factories. And I had come to Ford to help open the doors for women in manufacturing. Or I could do it, carry the monkey, and just accept that this would actually reflect badly on the leadership. So back then I had to pick my battles. Everybody has to pick their battles. I still pick battles today, but back then the battles were different, and they were, around in this case, humiliating action. And so I decided it wasn't a battle worth picking, that I thought that the message that it sent was that, I didn't care whether I had to carry the monkey or not. I had a really important job to do, and you couldn't humiliate me. And it was embarrassing, but I carried the monkey. And eventually what I thought would happen was that it really reflected poorly on the leadership. So the monkey one day disappeared from my desk. And the other message that I learned is really, picking your battles. So I think if you can take forward today, because a story like this, the chances of something like this happening in today's world are not very good. But if you can learn from what I have been through, is pick your battles. Resilience is learned, but resilience is also earned. I got a lot of credit, a lot of people saw me differently after I chose to just do this and just not let it affect me. It did change how people viewed me. And so I earned quite a bit of resilience from that. So, do you bend or do you break? There are a lot of things that can break you in the workforce. And there's a lot of things that can bend you. And in this case, I bent, I didn't break. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent, Eleanor Roosevelt. Just a fascinating story, whether she's someone you know well or someone you respect. A woman who had everything and had really, really a challenging life, challenging upbringing. And the same place where I was required to carry the monkey, I got a people change and move, and I had a new boss. And when this boss came in, he wasn't overly fond of me. And one of the ways he expressed that was by reducing my job scope to a very small part of the factory that I was running. Instead of running the entire large factory, he gave me a small part. And then I found out one day, and it seemed kind of interesting that, again, this gets back to kind of the quality data story, that the quality data was really, really bad in my department. And so this was really a challenge because instead of being responsible for thousands of processes, I was responsible for a few hundred. And now the data that coming from my department was really bad. But I've always been a person that has been open, go to the floor, meet with people trust. And one of the technicians on the production floor came to me one day just beside himself and very upset. And I said, "What is wrong?" He said, "The boss has asked me to falsify the data." So you can imagine, this is like, not only has this person demoted me, demoralized me, but they're falsifying the data. And at this point, this was a battle then I picked to fight. In this case, we make a product that has enormous safety features in it. So one, the company was spending a lot of money repairing cars that didn't need to be repaired. But these are people's lives at risk. Plus, just that whole integrity issue was really when it comes to integrity, that's a battle I'll pick every day. Whether I lose or not, I know I have to know that I've picked the right battle. And so I did go to HR, and that person was addressed and that situation was cleared up. But in the end, my ego and my just self-worth took a huge beating during that time, because I knew that I was better than the measurements that were being played back to me. And so I learned a really important lesson there. And I channel this expression to this day. So in the end, if you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're right. 100-year-old Henry Ford statement. Today, I believe it's called manifesting. But if you think you can't do something, I can guarantee you won't do it. And if you think you can do something, even if you fail, you've tried, and that is a positive energy that moves you forward. Women in product. Never doubt that a small group of people can change the world, to paraphrase Margaret Mead. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I absolutely, one of the reasons I'm here today, one of the reasons I'm taking time today, one of the reasons I speak to young women and middle school girls is together we can do this. And if we're going to move forward, the great technologies, the great solutions, the great problem solving, we need to do it as women. When I came into the workforce, it was one and done. There was one BP, there'd be one woman at the table, and the rest of the women, it really set up it set up a very unhealthy competitive set that we as women walked into. And today, And I saw that early enough in my career that I made a commitment to myself that I always bring women along with me and bring women together. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this together. Disrupt yourself before someone else does. So when I came to Bloom, I was 51 years old. And those of you that are not familiar with the auto industry, most people retire at 55. It's a 30-year role. Do your job 30, 34 years, start at 21, start at 22, and then you retire. And so I was 4 years from, and I had a great job. When I talk about my job at Nissan in Tennessee, I cannot even describe how great of a job I had. And in a great community, I had a 7th grader and I had an 11th grader. And I disrupted all of us. I disrupted me, I disrupted them, and we moved to California. And I could have easily just retired and maybe gone on to consulting, but I saw an opportunity for me to learn, for me to grow, and again, for me to really be part of changing the world. And I rarely live in my comfort zone. And I'm not saying you should never live in your comfort zone, but I do want to challenge you. If you want to move forward and if you want to have a career like mine, you got to get out of your comfort zone most of the time. So let's talk about Bloom. I've talked about it off and on. Our mission is to make clean, reliable energy affordable for everyone in the world. And when we say a mission, we are based in NASA. And so when we have a mission, we're a very mission-driven company. So the energy realities today, I think everybody is familiar with these, but in the end, what is happening with the climate change or fires or earthquakes and hurricanes and usage going up is that we have lack of control over our energy destiny. And what I love about Bloom is Bloom offers control over energy destiny. So the other thing that I really like about Bloom, and this goes back to growing up in a steel town and air quality, I'm very passionate about a couple things. Women in STEM, girls in STEM, girls in tech, women in tech is one of the passions, but my other passions are jobs and manufacturing. I believe that you can do both. I believe that you can have jobs in manufacturing and communities that come together. And one of the things I'm proud of being a part of with the Bloom Energy Server is we don't have combustion. So since we don't have combustion, we've been able to do some really innovative things and support pop-up hospitals during COVID, where a diesel generator might be outside of a hospital. So here you have people with respiratory issues being powered by a diesel generator that emits particulates. And the Bloom solution can be right next to a hospital and maintain the air quality and not add in a negative way. So there are so many parts of Bloom. The Bloom solution is a multivariate equation. So resiliency, air quality, and speed, among other things. So in closing, I want to thank you for listening. Don't stress over your career. If I stressed over my career, I'd never be where I am today. But I did take educated risks and chances, and some of them were pretty big risks. And I would encourage you, particularly as a woman in product, do something dynamic like Bloom Energy. You may not come to Bloom, but take the skills you have and go make a difference for yourself and for the world. And then in closing, have fun. Do you have a job or do you go to work? Do you have a career? Really think about it. You're going to be doing this a long time. I've been in the workplace a very long time. And the places that when I have done my best work is when I'm enjoying my work. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions in the following session.
Thank you, Kalia, Oriana, and Susan, and to all of you who joined us live. If you would like to connect with our speakers, they are available for question and answers and roundtable discussions in our interactive sessions at 10 a.m. You can find the session on the side navigation of the hop-in window. Coming up next on this stage, join us for Recharge, Readjust, and Rework. Be sure to check out our many ways to network with your fellow attendees, Reach out directly or meet someone new in our networking mixers under sessions where you'll be paired with a fellow product manager for a time chat, or start your own follow-up chat. Click add a session and start your own roundtable, then send your session URL in a DM here on Hopin to anyone you'd like to invite to join. Log on to the hashtag 20WIP app to review presentation decks and replay any talks you may have missed or want to dive deeper into. Don't forget to check out our virtual selfie station in the hashtag 20 Women in Product app. Grab your Women in Product swag at our online store at bonfire.com/store/WIP Women in Product/. Take it further challenge inspired by something shared in a session. Head to the attendee section in the app where you can search by name and connect beyond the event. There are bonus points. Request a virtual coffee date for the next week in the app, and you'll have the option to add meetings to your calendar of choice right from the app. Thank you again for joining us, and be sure to join us for the next session on this very stage. Recharge, readjust, and rework.